The thing about the fairs is that they're just incredibly hard to predict. So frustrating and so fun and so fascinating at the same time. That's the moment where kind of the roles reverse and the artist has to sort of reassure the gallerist and give them the confidence that everything's going to be okay. Quite often the advice I would give is like swing by the fair, say hello, take them a juice, thank them. For a visitor who's coming into an art fair for the first time, which is quite often the case at affordable art fair, the whole experience can be completely overwhelming. They need to be able to walk into a stand and have a really clear sense of what the identity of that gallery is in order to trust them. It's not an exam to be failed. You don't have to go and read 4 books on the art world before you start your collection.
Blythe Bolton, bonjour.
Bonjour.
I'm very, very happy to welcome you today to have this conversation on the art market. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, thanks.
I was really eager to have this conversation with you because you've been taking on many roles in the art market. I could read that you managed a gallery and now that you're in charge of 2 fairs, so the Affordable Art Fairs of Brussels and the Affordable Art Fair of Amsterdam. For people who are listening, you studied the art history. So has it always been the plan for you to work in the art market?
So I don't think it was ever the plan to work in the art market. It certainly wasn't something that I set out to do. It took me a long time to kind of find my way. But I think that the seeds for working in the art industry were there more actually in my family background. So my grandma kind of loves moving house. She moved house quite a lot growing up. And she used to say, the second thing that I do after making the bed is hang up some pictures and plug in some lamps, because actually that's what makes a new building feel like home. She still has me sort of rehang her house every 12 weeks when I go back. You know, she's always wanting to move things about. So I think that that is probably where I was kind of built for the art fair. Because there's a lot of hanging things up and moving things around. And it's all about home as well and living with art.
Indeed. So it comes from your grandma. Then you decided to go for art history and then you looked for a job, but you didn't necessarily have in mind to manage a fair, or that hasn't been a dream for a very long time, or on the contrary, you were traveling the world to go to every fairs when you were when you were young and you thought I want to be there one day.
No, you know, it's interesting because I think I was always really passionate about stories. So I was very into communication, and I had a great teacher in high school who taught me art history. I was really lucky to come to that subject at 16, 17.
Yes,
And
it's very
she
young.
was so passionate about it. And I think that that kind of stuck with me. And then I took a year abroad where I lived and worked in LA. And actually, I thought I might go into film initially. But once I got a closer look at that industry, I thought maybe, okay, we go to university and see what happens there. So I ended up at St Andrews, which is on the course that Prince William and Kate met on.
Oh la la.
So there were a lot of Americans there, and everybody used to call art history the husband hunter's degree because it was loads and loads of women doing it. But we had phenomenal teachers, and my passion really kind of developed there. But actually, I didn't really know about art fairs until my mid 20s. So I'm 37 now. So art fairs have really been taking off in that time since.
Do you recall when you bought your first piece of art?
When I bought my first piece of art, oh, that's a good question. I remember, I mean, I am such a collector, and I'm also somebody who just sort of loves hanging, you know, hanging everything on the walls. But I did buy a piece when I was exhibiting at the London Affordable Art Fair. I think that must be one of my first purchases. Oh, I love this artwork so much to this day, but I'll never forget the experience that I had because I bought it actually from an artist collective, and it's this beautiful black and white, slightly surreal screen print. And the artist started, I'm somebody, it's kind of about my relationship with the work. And I knew I wanted to buy it. And I just went to the artist. I said, okay, I want to buy this one, please. I don't, that's it. And then they started telling me the whole story. Oh, the artist is, and I didn't ask actually. And I didn't really
Spontaneously.
particularly need to know. And I quite like finding out about the artist in the years after I've bought an artwork. It was interesting because the person almost talked me out of it because they were layering all this meaning on it that actually wasn't why
Yeah.
I connected to it.
So interesting that you know that you want to learn about the artist afterwards. Like first
Mhm.
it's the meeting with the artwork. If I go back to what you do today, how would you describe your day-to-day job to a kid, like someone who has no clue about the art market?
Oh, how would I describe it to a kid? Well, it's a lot of emails. Like everybody else, I think these days it's a lot of emails and a lot of meetings. In some ways, there are a lot of logistics. It is an event management role. But what's super nice about being a fair director is I always compare it to being like a gardener, because actually what we're creating with the fair is a sort of ecosystem. And within my job, there are very clear seasons. So you have the start of the season when you open applications and you set your dreams for what you want to grow and flourish that year. And then throughout the year, the role changes. And so when we're getting close to the fair, then it's a lot more speaking with the security guards, making sure we have the right signage, all these kind of very
Of course.
practical things.
Imagine
Yes.
also the staff is evolving from a little team to like a crowd.
Exactly. That also changes a lot. And the funny thing for me as well is I'm the person that everybody wants to talk to the week before and the week of a fair. And then there are lots of people I don't hear from, when it's not fair season. So yeah, it's always interesting to me that we start getting, lots of emails from artists the week before say, oh, how do I exhibit at the fair? And actually, we've already decided what will be exhibited at the fair 6 months
Of
previous.
course.
So yeah, there's definitely a seasonality to it, which makes it very different throughout the year and
And
requires lots of different skill set.
of course, you just mentioned it, but for artists to clarify, so you're selecting the gallerists and the artists that will be exhibited 6 months before. That's approximately
Yeah, it varies a little bit from team to team within Affordable Art Fair. So, for example, if I take Belgium and the Netherlands, we're a small team of four or five people. We open
throughout
up,
the year before the
yeah,
fair.
yeah, working all year round.
Right, yeah.
So we open applications for both of the fairs, normally at the beginning of March. And the Amsterdam Fair takes place in October, or has been taking place in October. So that's quite a short window where the application is sort of 6 weeks, and then we have kind of 3 or 4 months until the fair. For Brussels, the application window is slightly longer, but we've decided those earlier in advance because the same team are taking care of the Amsterdam production. And when we're running that production, then we don't have time to
Of
review applications for Brussels. So there is a little bit of kind of individuality with each of the fair.
And usually, how many applications do you receive for, let's say, Amsterdam?
So for Amsterdam, we had a fair of, I think, 69 stands this year. And we received over 125 applications. I think we're 130 or something like that. So the competition is really tough.
So your role is to interview all galleries, or like, do you have a call with them? How is it working?
Normally, the process is we have an online portal,
Yes.
and the gallery will upload all of their information. Some of them are already in our system because they're participating in lots of fairs and have been the company's been going for 26 years, I think, this year. And then they will send in their application with artwork images, with the artist bio, with quite often a vision for what they want the stand to look like. The last edition of Amsterdam had the theme of nature and connection. So we're always quite excited when we see artists and applications that are really speaking to that, because that gives us the marketing and the communication thread that we need to publicize the fair. So that's more what the starting process looks like. And then from there we make a selection and we try and give some feedback. And yeah, that's how it goes.
Obviously, I know the process because Singulat has been
Oh
exhibiting
yeah.
various
That's,
affordable art fairs, but I really want artists to better understand how what's happening backstage, and
mhm.
and so we're submitting the pictures of the artists that
Mm.
we plan to exhibit. Then the fair committee selection selects the galleries they want to
Mhm.
have. And then is your role to advise how to curate a booth? Do you advise sometimes the galleries how to better showcase the works in order for the works to be more appealing? Yeah, something that's part of the role.
Yes, so we see different styles of hanging preferred in different markets as well. So in continental Europe, we tend to prefer a kind of museum hang with all of the artworks having quite a lot of space to breathe and that there's enough white wall, or well, it doesn't have to be white actually.
Yeah, but
Some of the most interesting stands aren't. But yeah, that there's a sense of harmony because quite often what will happen is a gallerist or an exhibitor will see the fair from their own, I mean, this is totally natural, but really only from their perspective, and they want to show a whole potpourri of every great artist they've got, but they're not conscious of the fact that for a visitor who's coming into an art fair for the first time, which is quite often the case at affordable art fair, the whole experience can be completely overwhelming. So they need to be able to walk into a stand and have a really clear sense of what the identity of that gallery is in order to trust them and to see, okay, this person has a clear vision and that the artwork is displayed in a way that they're able to connect with it rather than walking in and feeling completely overwhelmed.
from an external point of view, I think that would be the most difficult thing, how to make sure that visitor is not overwhelmed by the diversity of booths that might look very nice and very appealing individually, but
Mm.
that collectively isn't really resonating the same way. For instance, how do you decide that you're going to put that booth next to this one? Is it because you believe some works will work well together, or is it a different reason?
Yeah, sometimes it changes from year to year. For me, I prefer a little bit of contrast because what it means is if we have everybody who's exactly, if we have three bronze sculpture specialists all right next door to each other, quite often they're all going for the same type of client. And that means the client gets sort of stuck. They don't have that sort of diverse fair experience where they're kind of naturally being called to different places. And again, it's a little bit like the gardening metaphor. It's a bit strange if you plant all of your tulips in just one space. So it's a little bit like that, finding balance and texture.
The metaphor of the garden is working well here. In some booth, you need some space to take a step back and breathe. Interesting. Well, I had a question from an artist actually. This is something I like to do, asking artists what they would like to ask to the great
Mhm.
guest speakers. And they were really wondering what's the typical profile of the buyer coming to the fair, and how is it different from potentially the one going to the gallery at the opening, for instance?
So I think one of the things that Affordable Art Fair is so well known for is attracting visitors who have never been to an art fair before. And that's why we have an exhibitor in Amsterdam who also does the TEFAF. And he comes back to Affordable Art Fair because he meets people who would never think to go to an art fair, who's maybe didn't grow up in an art background, but they're in a house with walls like everybody else, and they're curious and they're making their first steps, and we're very clear in our communication that it's a very welcoming, relaxed space where they're encouraged to ask lots of questions and to get curious. Yeah.
Asking a lot of questions, it's not typically the thing that you dare to do when you enter a gallery.
Yeah, and so to answer the question, it's a huge, huge range and variety of people. I think that's part of what makes it so much fun. And certainly, when I was an exhibitor in London, I actually sold an artwork to a 12-year-old boy who came to the fair and then insisted to his parents that he wanted to spend his birthday money that he had kind of committed to buying a scooter with. He really wanted this artwork and he was talking about it until 11 o'clock at night and really insisted that they came back. You never know.
I did my student jobs in retail, and that's the first thing you learn. Like,
Yeah.
talk to everyone the same way because you
Yeah.
never know who is actually going to buy. How would you describe affordable art fairs? And Does each location have specificity, or do you try to standardize some of the things?
It's definitely a mix of both. For us, the balance is always about embedding that welcoming, friendly, fun DNA that is Affordable Art Fair that has a universal reach. So there's always the magenta pink of our logo around on site. There's always an emphasis on really giving our visitors a warm experience. All of the artworks have to be by living artists and they all have to be within the price bracket that is set slightly differently in each market, just depending on.
Purchase power, I mean,
Yeah,
and budget.
exactly.
So, for instance, for Brussels and Amsterdam, what's the price bracket?
They're both currently set at 10,000, but generally are, I mean, there are works that are sold at the high end, but most works are selling, the average price is around 1,500. And then there's a whole range. Enabling visitors to pay in installments is another thing that we kind of encourage within the company as well, because sometimes that does help lead to bigger investments. But what's really, really interesting for me within the company and that I previously saw as an exhibitor was the art historical DNA of a country will quite often show up in the contemporary tastes of the buyers. In the UK, for example, where Turner and Constable and seascapes and landscapes are a huge part of their history, those are the big names that most people would know, and it's an island nation as well. That will show up in quite a lot of what people are comfortable buying. And the Dutch are much, much more ready to have a portrait of somebody not from their family on their wall because they're from this incredible Vermeer Rembrandt tradition. So that's always super interesting. And so that will show up in the selection of what's successful at the fair quite often.
So this is overrepresented in what you receive, but also you take that in consideration when selecting the works.
I mean, there are a whole range of kind of ingredients that we're looking at when we make the selection, but it is really nice if, for example, in Brussels, where Magritte is huge, if there's a gallery from New York that wants to join the fair, if they've got an artist who has a kind of cultural hook to the city, it's going
Better
to make it
position.
faster to create that connection with visitors who are new to the art world.
At affordable art fairs, do you try to have a representation of diversity in terms of, in Europe, do you try to have galleries from outside the continent, or in terms of male, female artists exhibited, do you have like something standardized at the brand level, or is it up to each location to decide what kind of diversity they want to have?
So we're quite lucky in the sense that we do get so many applications from all over the world. Because it's a global brand, actually, that quite often happens very naturally. It's really, really hard to try and curate it on a data basis and go for the best, go for really good work. We're also conscious of the costs of, so if a gallery is flying in to Brussels from Australia, the shipping costs are huge, the carbon footprint
Huge.
is huge. We're mindful of those things.
It's more a question whether in Brussels or in Amsterdam, because of the profile of the buyers, you think it might not be so successful. If galleries from, I don't know, South America comes in, maybe they won't have the same success as galleries that knows exactly the tastes of the buyers.
The thing about the fairs is that they're just incredibly hard to predict, and
I
it's
remember that.
so frustrating and so fun and so fascinating at the same time. I remember a colleague of mine saying, "Oh my gosh, I feel so worried about this gallerist. It's all pen and ink. It's really gothic. I just don't see this being the taste of this local market at all. This is going to be a disaster." Da, 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 da. And then they had an absolutely amazing fair because actually all the people who loved that kind of work finally found it, and it was beautifully presented, and also it was completely authentic to who that gallerist was and who those artists were. And people can get completely entranced by that. It's the thing about art as well, is that it is speaking to a part of everybody's subconscious that is kind of a mystery to so many of us. Well, to everybody. I try not to sort of second guess it too much.
Okay. Do you have some statistics in terms of galleries? Do you have a lot of female-owned galleries, or is it something that you see changing? Because I'm really committed in seeing more women at leadership positions, both in the art world but elsewhere. I've been paying a lot of attention to make sure that we represent at least half of female artists. But I know that it used to be harder because there were more male gallerists. So I was wondering if you see, in terms of owner of galleries, whether that's easy to have a diversity.
Yeah, if I think of the Amsterdam Fair, which was recently, I see a lot of couples. And also, we have some great artist collectives which run really, really well.
Okay, this is interesting. You were mentioning it earlier when you mentioned the first piece you bought. Maybe you can give a little bit of insights about what does it mean to be an artist collective? How can you apply to the fair?
I would say there are three kind of main business structures that we see coming in the application. So we have a traditional gallery model. They're still around and they're still amazing. And we have some really phenomenal female gallerists. And then we have a lot of artist-owned galleries, which are great. In Amsterdam and Brussels, we have a minimum of 4 artists like that have to be shown on the stand. So we don't have solo presentations at those fairs. In an artist-owned construction, one of those 4 artists, for example, would be the owner of the gallery, and then they are selecting the other ones and they just run it. That's their business. And then we also have artist collectives. The ones that I've seen that seem to work really harmoniously and really well are where all the jobs that a gallerist or a gallery would be doing are kind of divided up according to the skills of the people within the collective. Maybe one of the artists is really, really good at presenting work, at communicating. They're kind of easy in that sales role. One of them's really, really good at making video content, and one of them's really good at getting all the invoices out, and they sort of divide this within them. And to be honest, quite often they're artists who are coming to the profession later in life, so they've had that experience of
They have a background in
yeah.
others. Do they give themselves a name and exist after the fair, or they really meet in order to have a common application?
No, so normally for the Amsterdam and Brussels, again, each affordable art fair is slightly different. They need to be established with a
Okay.
website. We need to have the confidence that they are able to collaborate well together. We only are in contact with one in order to create the participation, because if we got 5
No,
different
of course.
stand designs from the artists, it would be kind of chaotic. So yeah, the website's very important, like a brand, a purpose, all of the things that you would have if you were setting up a business for yourself. It's still, that's how it needs to come across, because it's really about provide a professional service, because that reflects also on affordable art fair.
That's interesting. Have you seen more and more collective emerging, or is it something that is stable in terms of ratio?
I think it's been pretty steady. I think we're seeing more artist owned galleries starting,
Okay.
which is exciting. Obviously, with the dawn of the internet and social media, there are a lot of artists who are, who have these marketing skills and branding abilities.
So
That's,
it's more artist-owned galleries that you see as an evolution of the art
Mhm.
market.
Yeah.
Um, they will work as a gallery exhibiting other artists, but the only difference is that they are artists themselves.
Mhm.
And do you see a like a pattern in the profile of these artists that decide to at some point run their galleries? Because we will have many artists listening to this podcast, so maybe one of them will suddenly realize, oh my God, this is actually what I should be doing.
Yeah, quite often they've maybe trained as artists, and then they've gone off into a different career, and then they're coming back to that original passion. And they've developed their ability to run a small business. All those kind of business skills that I think so often don't really get communicated or taught to artists
In
at
art
art
school.
school,
Yeah.
which is just drives me absolutely crazy.
No,
It's such
I
it's
know.
such a shame.
I know.
Um,
How do you actually describe the sales process if we go back to the fair and really at the moment when the fair takes place? Is there a typical fair sales process? Because it's so short, like it's a few days only. So from the moment that the buyer sees the work, decides to buy it, is buying an artwork at a fair different from buying it on another channel?
I think that there is a little bit more buzz when you buy at a fair. there's that sense. Certainly, at affordable art fair, there we have a wrapping desk. So the artwork, you see people around you buying, saying, yes, okay, let's do it, handing over their card. And then it comes off the wall, it goes to the wrapping desk and it goes out the door into the car. And that's it. It's off to its new home. So there is a kind of collective effervescence that happens at an art fair that doesn't happen in a gallery. It can be very intimate in a gallery, and it can be, I think it can be very special, but in that it kind of quiet way often. That, I mean, I think that for me is kind of the key
The
difference.
difference. But is it often that people are coming in the first day and then coming back 2 days later, or you don't really see a pattern?
We do. And I think that happens with everything. There are people like me who are incredibly impulsive, and we see it. We love it. We look at our bank account and we go, oh, okay. And that's it. And then there are other people who need to go away and think about it for a year. And then the artwork gets sold and then they feel heartbroken. And then maybe they come and they buy something else, and it can go like that.
How would you recommend to an artist that has their works exhibited by a gallery at a fair? How can they support the gallery the best?
I think the best thing that you can do is create the most incredible marketing materials for your gallerist. So, taking really good quality photographs of the work with different angles, publicizing your participation online, being emotionally supportive of the gallerist, because actually that's the hardest bit. They're under a huge amount of pressure at the fair. And I'll never forget going to, there was a fair that I was at. We didn't really know the Hamptons in New York, and we'd taken these huge artworks that were kind of about plastic surgery, basically. They were very controversial, and we didn't realize how many people in at that fair would really relate to having just had a facelift. And the artist was there, and she was listening to all of these people kind of relive the trauma of having their face, of having this really intense surgery. And it was really difficult
Oh
for
my
her.
God.
So
Yeah.
quite often the advice I would give is like, swing by the fair, say hello, take them a juice, thank them, be grateful. That's the moment where like that where kind of the roles reverse, and the
Mhm.
artist has to sort of reassure the gallerist and give them the confidence that everything's going to be okay. It's a really high pressure moment for the gallerist. And so not to stand around looking at the stand, watching the gallerist talk about the artwork. You sort of have to let them get on with their job.
So
Uh,
before marketing material with
yeah.
pictures, emotional supports
Yeah.
during and after, and indeed publicizing the fact that they're at the fair, write to their collectors to inform that they will be
Every
exhibiting.
yeah, every gallerist is different, so I think it's always nice to offer.
Yeah.
It could be that the gallerist has already given away all their free invitations for the fair, so that's not needed. But it might be the complete opposite, and maybe the gallerist is going off to a city where they don't have a network,
Mm.
and they would really appreciate if if you know somebody working at an embassy or a law firm, that you offer to use that network.
Depending on the context, whether that's your country or the
Yeah.
gallerist country. Can you recall an anecdote of how an artist's career can be transformed and boosted by exhibiting at a fair?
So I think for affordable art fair, I mean, there have been times in the past where I think it was possible. Like there will have been the early years where you could have bought a Banksy screen print or something like that. There will have been these kind of gems, but it's not really about individual stories of fame and celebrity. I think the big triumph of affordable art fair is the fact that 26 years later, it's been this incredible platform for people to build a business in the art world. And so it's actually in the fact that there are so many living artists who are able to be professional artists, and they're not home only doing pet commissions. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but
Can
they're able
express.
to make the work that they really want to make because there is this platform. So I think it's really in the success story is really that there are thousands and thousands of artists who have been able to do that, who are able to, just keep
Live.
making work every day, yeah, and pay their mortgage.
For sure. And I wanted to know what you advise to gallery at the fair to show the price.
It's a rule. It's a
It's a
rule
rule.
in the
It's a
art.
rule.
So I think that's the other important thing is building that transparency and empowering the visitors to educate themselves. So at a certain point, they will notice by reading enough price tags that, okay, photography comes in an addition, that a screen print is quite often less expensive than an oil painting, that frame, all of the nuances of how we value and price things, price artworks, it all kind of builds up just through that experience of looking in that, and that building up that knowledge is about going out and having a good time and absorbing it. It's not an exam to be failed. You don't have to go and read 4 books on the art world before you start your collection. But there are so many different other roads, to get there. It shouldn't be another
Sure.
chore or another way for people to measure their success or failure at something. It's the artists make their work with so much passion. It should be bought with passion and enjoyed with the same. So
And is it something that you have to convince gallery to do? I know it's a rule, so obviously they're aware, but is it something that is hard to make people understand why?
no, I think that they actually find it quite refreshing, in fact. It clarifies that process for everybody. It takes away the sort of strange dance that I think happens at these mid-tier and higher end fairs where sometimes it's just embarrassing. Like people don't always like talking about money, and it doesn't mean they don't have any. It's like they just don't like that feeling of going how much, and we don't do it. There just aren't that many other commercial experiences that we have where that's the case.
It doesn't serve the purpose of attracting people who are not familiar with
No,
the art market, for sure. Fairs is a quite recent phenomenon. What is it bringing to the art market? Why do you think it has been invented and the number has exploded?
I think that there are a couple of different reasons why it's exploded. Firstly, we actually love being together in big groups of people.
That's all social reality.
I think that's the social reality. And we like having something in the agenda where we're going to run into lots of people. It's exciting, where we're going to go and look at beautiful things and be inspired. It's an event and it's a buzz and it's that sense of discovery and adventure. And it's also about connecting with the people that you're going with as well. So I find nothing more interesting than sort of sending my boyfriend off round the fair, asking him to take pictures of what he likes, and then meeting him back in the bar and seeing what he's chosen. Because I learn so much about him through that process, even though I see him every day. It gives us a depth to our connection. And it's so much fun going around an art fair with your grandma or, with small kids. People see things totally differently. And I think we need to be reminded of that because it's so easy to just get caught up in the laundry and the emails and it's repeat. So I think the buzz, the connection, and to a degree, convenience as well, because you can see a huge amount of artwork and lots of different styles. And you have all of those points of when you're developing what your own take, when you're trying to learn about yourself and what you like and what you might want to buy and to live with, then sometimes the way that you figure out what you do like is also by establishing what you don't like. If you were going out in the city to visit 20 galleries, you would need a week, but you can do that in 3 hours. You can get a snapshot of lots of different styles and galleries and perspectives.
Mhm. From an external point of view, it seems that being managing a fair is it's a role with influence because you decide what is shown and what people can see. Do you feel that you have this influence?
Oh, I try not to think about it. I think, we take surveys from the visitor. We ask the visitors to give us their feedback as well. And we ask the exhibitors to give us their feedback as well. And so actually part of the influence position for me as the gardener in the middle is to really pay attention to, okay, what really blossomed and what struggled this year and where do we need to put a little bit more attention. Those are the things that we look at, is really listening and sort of absorbing, okay, what's working and how do we support everybody in this matchmaking, because actually that's what it is. You're trying to matchmake your audience with an artwork. And then there's everything that happens in between. How do we also make that a fun process for everybody?
Like in terms of business, that's indeed a very good way to do. So, do you think there will be more and more fairs? What can you predict about the future of art fair? More fairs, bigger fairs, more fairs happening at the same time, maybe in the same city? Do you see things happening like this?
I think the way things are going, particularly since the pandemic, people are becoming more sensitive to their home environments. It's the backdrop to everybody's content, to their selfies, to their Zoom calls. People want to live with beautiful things that, well, they don't all have to be beautiful, but
That they like.
yeah, they want to, there's a kind of consciousness to what we're buying now, that things come with some meaning and that they're enriching our lives. And I think as long as that is growing, then I think that there's probably quite a good chance that there will continue to be maybe more fairs starting in places that we might not expect. So it won't be only about the big metropolitan cities. It'll also be about smaller fairs in smaller cities as well, I think.
As a last topic, I would like to ask you some advice. An artist that would really want to exhibit at a fair, how should they do?
Well, I think it's a really good idea to practice getting into the mind of the gallerist and to think about, what is a gallerist trying to do? Am I a good partner for that gallerist?
Okay.
That's not just about the work. That's about, okay, am I archiving my work properly? Is my website up to date? I'm not really on social media, so I find it really hard to tell other people to do this. But I think it's an important part of being an artist these days, is just understanding that it's not just about making the work anymore. It's also about being professional. So I think that making sure that those things are in order, because actually, as part of our artist review, we're looking at every artist's website, we're looking at their social media, we're looking at how they present themselves. So in order to be eligible, that's going to be important to the gallerist if they're taking part in fairs as well, that everything is kind of handled.
It's important that you mention it again, that the selection process involves looking at the artist's websites, links that you can find on the internet. And what can it bring to an artist to exhibit at a fair?
Well, I think the sales are the big, that's the key part.
For
Um,
sure.
uh, and then I think the contacts as well. I mean, we all meet people at fairs. I mean, I remember meeting Leonardo DiCaprio at one of the New York fairs. You never know who you're going to meet.
Who will show up? Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And you never know where there's a big commission coming from as well. So it can be that a hotel owner is coming to the fair, and then suddenly there's a commission for it's exposure. It's exposure to Case of Amsterdam. That's 16,000 people in 4.5 days.
Do you see artists raising their prices after exhibiting at a fair? Is it a typical practice that once you exhibited at a fair, you can raise your price, or it's not a recommendation?
That's not something. Every individual is completely different, and it happens over different sort of time.
Okay, there's not a specific rule where you're like, okay, it's such a good line on the CV that you can try to think of raising your prices.
I wouldn't say that about the affordable art fairs. Of
Fairs.
course, if you're suddenly exhibited at Art Basel, then it's a different conversation. But I think it's also important to think about the long-term strategy as well. And if an artist has sold a lot of your works at a specific price and there's a market for you amongst a group of people who have that amount to spend, then it might not be wise to go to take a big jump and then lose the potential of selling to that whole group of people.
And maybe last question about outside of just exhibiting at fairs, an advice to artists on how they can create and enhance the visibility of their works and what they do, like more general advice.
I think investing in great video content is a really, really great move at the moment. So, a kind of 1 minute video of you in your studio with like hair washed, looking good, and really presenting your work and cut in a way that's very inspiring and that it sparks curiosity. I think that's a great asset to
A video where they talk or where they just show the works
where they talk. So I think it's always a good idea to have a look at, okay, what kind of content is being created and shared by galleries that you admire, by the fairs that you want to participate in? What are they posting? And are you posting, so those assets are really, really important, I think.
So there are many things that you're saying within this advice is that first you need to have a list of gallerists that you think are doing a great job, fairs that you love to exhibit, and then having a regular check on what they do and benchmarking a little bit the content so that you can produce videos, content that will fit and where they can recognize that you're doing something similar.
Yeah, but I do think it's a fine line, and these two things are different in the sense that I think artists also have to protect themselves from the comparison that
Yeah.
happens when online too much, looking at what other artists are doing and trying to emulate anybody. The other thing that has to happen is you have to be becoming the most true, authentic version
Yeah,
of
it's very
yourself.
difficult.
These are hard things to do, and I think it's also really important that artists understand that, like, they're not expected to do that on their own. And that's why great gallerist relationships are so valuable, or having a really good collective of other artists, or working in a studio with other artists, being supported by the people around you, and having those really meaningful professional relationships that are going to give you that confidence or push you on a little bit when actually, oh, you just don't really want to do update your website or whatever, that thing that you get from working in a team when you're an independent as an artist. I mean, you have to build that support system for yourself. I think that's really important.
Yeah, building a support system. Indeed, very good advice. And just also, you were mentioning they have to keep their authentic self and really their DNA. And often it's also other people who give you the mirror and tell you what is specific to you compared to what they see elsewhere. It's in this
Hmm.
conversation that you realize what makes you unique. So when you're
Hmm.
sometimes hesitating in how you should show your work and whether this new work is the direction you should follow or not. Indeed, this supportive system is very useful to work as a mirror.
Yeah, and I would add to that to continue to make things that have depth as well, because we do see it when we're doing our artist review. I can tell if somebody who's trained and gone away and developed the skills, and then maybe they're making abstract work now, but there are a lot of people who think, for whom it's just glamorous to be an artist, and they're in it for the content and the influence, and they don't have that. They haven't gone in and really put in the tough hours. So also to go away and to really yeah, and to make work with meaning, and I think also study is part of that as well. So like reading, The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron, and Big Magic by Elizabeth get curious about creativity as well.
No, indeed, staying curious. That's why we like looking at the works of artists. So they have to also nurture this curiosity themselves. Well, maybe just to end the conversation, who's the person I should interview from the art world that has a great influence, that is doing something different?
Who would be the person? I have to say, I read a book recently by a woman called Bianca Bosker, who is a journalist who threw herself into the art world. And I think this is another thing that's really interesting
Interesting.
for artists to do, is to just wear different hats as well, to get the experience of being a gallery assistant, or working in different areas. It gives so many different perspectives, because she couldn't connect to art, but she's from New York and she really worked at it, and over the course of this book she really gets into it. So she would be one that I
You
would
would recommend? No, cool. I will try to reach out and see if she's willing to do it. Thank you very much, Blythe. I wish you a lot of luck for the next fair season.
Thank you so much. It was great speaking to you, Vera.
I hope that you liked this episode and that you got concrete insights for your personal journey. Follow us on YouTube or your favorite audio platforms to be updated of my next talks with other art market insiders. Goodbye.